I'm going to show you how to subnet in this video. Subnetting lets us take a network ID and break it down into smaller, more manageable networks. In order to do the subnetting with my method, we have to use our chart. This is the same chart that we use in the binary to decimal conversions. If you're not familiar with your binary to decimal or decimal to binary conversions, you need to know that first. So please go back and look at that material before we cover the subnetting here. If you remember, our chart has 8 bits, and the reason why it has 8 bits is because each octet of an IP address is made up of 8 bits. So in order to get your chart going, drop 8 bits on the board. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then on the right-hand side, start with 1 and double as you go to the left. 1 doubled is 2, 2 doubled is 4, 4 doubled is 8, 8 doubled is 16, 16 doubled is 32, 32 doubled is 64, and 64 doubled is 128. These are also our power numbers, and our power numbers are very important to us when we come to subnetting. With the decimal to binary and binary to decimal conversions, the power numbers weren't that important, but they really are very important when we do our subnetting with this method. 2 to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. 2 to the first is 2. 2 to the second is 4. 2 to the third is 8. 2 to the fourth is 16. 2 to the fifth is 32. 2 to the sixth is 64. And 2 to the seventh is 128. If you can remember how to draw up that chart, you can do any subnetting that you would ever need to do for this class. Plus, you can do any binary conversions that you would ever need to do. There are many other different ways of subnetting out there, and if you already know one of those methods, by all means go ahead and use it. But I believe this is a very easy and efficient way to subnet. So let's say you're given a network ID. We'll use the network ID of 192.168.1.0 with a /24. We can subnet either by locations or by number of hosts. And the first way I'm going to show you is by locations. With locations, remember that locations are ones and they're left-hand side of the line. So locations are ones and left-hand side of the line. PCs or hosts would be zeros and right-hand side of the line. So let's go ahead and let's do this for locations. Let's pretend that I tell you I want at least 6 locations, or 6 subnets, or 6 networks. So I'm given this network ID and I want to subnet it for 6 locations. What I need to do is ask myself 2 to what power is going to give me at least 6 locations. If I look up at my chart, 2 to the third is actually the best power number. 2 to the second, which is 4, is not enough for my 6 requirement. And 2 to the fourth, which is 16, is way too many. So I want to get as close as possible, and I'm going to use 2 to the third. What that 3, or that power number of 3, is telling me is that I have 3 ones left-hand side of the line. I'm going to be borrowing 3 ones from that last octet to do my subnetting. So what I'd like to do now is draw out my IP address with those 3 bits borrowed. And here it is. 192.168.1. Here comes my 3 bits borrowed. 1, 2, 3. Draw your line. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right up at the top is where our new subnet mask is always going to be. In slash notation, this will be my 25th, my 26th, and my 27th one. So my new subnet ID, subnet mask would be a /27. I started with the /24, which means I have 24 ones, and my subnet mask. Here's my 25th, 26th, and 27th. And if I convert this number back to decimal, it's a 128, a 64, a 32. That's a 224. Well, I started with a triple 255 with my /24. So /27 is a triple 255 dot 224. So that's going to be my subnet mask for all 6 of the locations that I need. So now we need to figure out our ranges. So we know what our subnet IDs are, and we also know what our broadcasts are going to be. What I like to do is I just start on the bottom or below our subnet mask line, and I make these all zeros. And your first ID is always going to start with 0. So this number here is just 0. Through, make your right-hand side of the line 1s. Whenever your right-hand side of the line is 1s, that is a broadcast. And what a broadcast message is, it's a message that's sent out to everybody on that network. So if I take this number, convert this back into decimal, what I have is I have a 16, an 8, a 4, a 2, and a 1. And if you're not sure, just take this number and you can put it right underneath your chart. So it would be a 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Anything with a 1 means we add up that value. So a 16, an 8, a 4, a 2, and a 1, which is 31. So my first range is 0 through 31. Now from this, I have a pattern that I can see. My difference is going to be 31. And my next range always has to start one more than the last. So what's one more than 31? It's 32. Now if I add 31 onto that, it's 63. And one more than 63 would be 64. Add 31 onto that, there's 95. One more than 95 is 96. Add 31 onto that, that's 127. One more than 127 is 128. It's 159. I'll continue over here. One more than 159 is 160. Add 31, that's 191. 192 through 223. And 224 through 255. 0 is the lowest I can have, and 255 is the highest I can possibly have. I cannot have any numbers higher than 255. All of the first numbers that I see are my network IDs. These identify each individual network or each individual subnet. These over here as well. The numbers that I'm circling on the right-hand side are my broadcasts. So if I wanted to send a broadcast message or a message that's going to reach everybody on the first subnet, I would send to the address of 192.168.1.31. And if I wanted to send a broadcast message to everybody in the third network, I would send to 192.168.1.95. That's the third network, and that is the broadcast address for that. As I said, these are my network IDs. So if I wanted to identify the fifth network, what the network ID would be 192.168.1.128. And if I wanted to identify the second network, it would be 192.168.1.32. Now if I want to start assigning PCs and printers and other devices IP addresses out of these networks or out of these ranges, the first one I could use over here would be the .1 all the way through .30. I can't assign a PC a .0 because that's the network ID. I can't assign a PC a .30 because that's the broadcast. Out of the fourth network range, the first PC I could assign would be a .97. I can't use the .96 because that's the network ID. All the way through .126. I could not use the .127 because that is the broadcast. So let's go over another quick example here using locations. Again, remember locations are going to be ones in left-hand side of the line. And that power number is going to tell you how many ones you have left-hand side of the line. So let's pretend here that I want 4 locations. 4 locations. So what I need to do is ask myself 2 to what power is going to give me 4 locations. If I take a look at my chart, 2 to the second here is actually going to give me 4 locations. So what that 2 is telling me is I'm going to have 2 bits left-hand side of the line. So draw out your IP address with those bits borrowed. Here comes my 2 bits borrowed. 1, 2, draw my line. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I always draw out my first 3 in decimal and then my last one in binary. Now what I do to figure out my ranges is I just put all zeros right below, because my first network ID is always going to be 0. Whenever I have zeros on the right-hand side, that's a network ID. Whenever I have ones on the right-hand side, that's a broadcast. So let's change this to all ones to figure out my broadcast. And now I ask myself, what is this number that I just boxed? Well, I don't have a 128, I don't have a 64 because those are zeros, but I have a 32, a 16, an 8, a 4, a 2, and a 1, which is 63. And now I kind of have my pattern where I have my difference here. It's 63. One more than 63 is 64. That's what the next network ID has to start with. If I add 63 onto this, I get 127. One more than 127 is 128. Add 63 onto that, that's 191. One more than 191 is 192. And add 63 onto that, that's 255. Again, I'm never going to see a number higher than 255. What you'll notice as you start doing subnetting is you'll start to see the same numbers over and over and over again. I'll never see a range 0 through 50 or a range 0 through 30. It just does not work that way with the bit patterns. I'm just kind of doing the pattern method. There is a whole longer method to do this where I could figure out exactly my network IDs and my broadcasts by continuing this method here. But I think it's just a little bit easier to get your pattern and continue on. Like I said, there's different methods out there, and if you have a method that works for you, go ahead and use it. But this is what I like to do. So here I have 4 possible locations. Here's my network IDs on the left-hand side. Right-hand side are my broadcasts. So let's say if I asked you what is the first PC I could assign to the second location. Well, the first PC I could assign to the second location would be 192.168.1.65. Again, I can't use the 64 because that is the network ID. And I couldn't use the 127 for a PC because that is the broadcast. What would the subnet mask be for every single one of these ranges and every single PC that I'm going to be assigning in these ranges? Well, again, your subnet mask is always right up at the very top, what I just circled. And this is a /2526. I started with the /24. Here's my 25th and my 26th one. So it's /26. And if I convert that to decimal, that means I have a 128 and a 64, which is 192. So the 22255 .192. So that's how you subnet for locations. Again, what you do is you figure out your number of locations, ask yourself 2 to what power is going to give me that number of locations. When you figure out that power number is telling you how many ones left-hand side of the line. So draw out those ones, draw your line, put zeros right-hand side of the line, and then figure out your ranges. Again, your subnet mask for all of the ranges is always going to be right up here at the top. We are not yet doing variable length subnet mask, so the subnet mask will remain the same for every single range. In the next video, I'll show you how to do subnetting by hosts or by PCs. The process will be basically the same, but there's just a couple little things that you need to be aware of when you're doing it by hosts. Thanks for watching.